Hello and welcome. When reporting truth becomes a crime, it's painfully clear that we are ruled by unconscionable criminals. This unpalatable but incontestable fact becomes increasingly obvious, but is recently fixed in the spotlight of world attention by the disgraceful roughhouse arrest of Julian Assange. This eminently courageous journalist's supposed crime was to report and prove monstrously inhumane war crimes that Luciferian war criminals, sadistic pedophiles and child sex traffickers want hidden. His truthful and conscientious reporting was for the benefit of the world community, with a pressing need to know the scope and the depth of the crimes against humanity routinely inflicted by murderous socio-psychopaths in positions of misplaced power. That same world community are clearly reminded of who the actual offenders are and the abhorrent nature of their multiple and ongoing crimes. It's important to note that instead of concentrating on these horrific war crimes that slaughtered 2 journalists along with innocent civilians, the sickeningly corrupt media exclusively focused vitriolic wrath upon the heroic individuals exposing the unmistakable criminality. Manufactured media outrage relentlessly vilified the messengers of truth, while ignoring obvious war crimes and those responsible for them. At the time of scripting this episode, public confusion, anger and deepening resentment run rampant from the travesty of justice this brutal arrest triggered. But many believe it brings a crucial tipping point a step closer. Well, I sincerely hope so, because out of control, criminal insanity is driving ever more oppressive globalist thuggery. For too long now, extortionist racketeers masquerading as government have grossly exceeded all lawful constraints for authentic governance through abusing political office to the worst extremes. I've previously highlighted what the constitutional role of government should be and the clearly defined limits of its powers, but need to revisit the issue because it sits squarely front and centre of the problem. Government's primary purpose is to protect individual rights, defend private property, and faithfully uphold and enact the will of the people. When it repeatedly fails in this function, it is unfit for purpose. In addition, its only power derives entirely from the consent of the people, without which it has no legitimate power whatsoever. It has never been endowed with the authority to extort money across the board using threats of violence and incarceration to enforce runaway racketeering. As repeatedly stated, all taxation is theft, while the national debt is an artificial construct of blatant fraud. Our Constitution provides that government is the sole entity duly authorised to print, issue and distribute currency at no interest to the nation. This method was successfully employed to fund the Snowy Mountain River scheme here in Australia and has equally beneficial precedents in the USA with the greenback dollar and in the UK with the Bradbury pound. However, this eminently advantageous money management removed the criminal banksters' snouts from the trough, which they urgently addressed by bribing and coercing elected representatives to collude with their fiscal gluttony. This corrupt contrivance imposed unrepayable interest upon crippling loans from private banking cartels, thereby enforcing the enduring and inescapable debt slavery of fraudulent national debt. Such treasonous fraud further makes government unfit for purpose, along with their donating countless millions of public monies to transnational criminal organisations like the Clinton Foundation and the UN. Ever since Julian Assange sought political asylum some 7 years ago, successive Australian Prime Ministers have demonstrated their spineless, grovelling subservience to globalist criminals by refusing to provide desperately needed assistance. Instead of protecting and supporting an Australian citizen in urgent need, they cravenly side with his predatory persecutors, who are grossly distorting reality with their criminal suppression of truth. This recent public attention sees increasingly ever more people actively opposing this parasitic tyranny. It is fervently hoped that enough brave and decent souls wake up in time and become motivated enough to prevent it. Thank you for watching.